door of break-proof glass. He could see inside, down a long corridor lined with landscapes, family portraits, and a few classical pieces in marble. His fingers closed on an acrylic box the size of a pack of cigarettes in his pocket. He stood close to the white circle next to the door, where access cards were swiped. Widener came around the corner at the far end of the hall and walked straight toward him. Nick waited, calm. Because it was dark outside and light within, he knew that Widener could see only his own reflection. But that did little to kill the eerie feeling of staring eye to eye at his target. Widener came closer until he was 6 feet away, then turned right down a hall as Nick pressed a button on the side of his device. It was a Proxmark amplifier. He'd built it himself, that boosted the signal between the key fob in Widener's pocket and the receiver by the door. The lock slid back with an expensive, beautifully engineered silence. Nick opened the door an inch, waited a few seconds, then entered, trailing Widener on the long runner across the herringbone floor. He was moving away from the living room toward a set of stairs that led to the upper floors, where Widener would be most vulnerable. Nick followed him as he went upstairs and disappeared into the bedroom suite. Nick didn't enter, just listened to the sounds of running water as he continued to the top floor and turned left into Widener's office. An antique desk commanded half the room, facing the windows and a sitting area with 2 club chairs, a sofa, and a wall-mounted television. Moonlight filtered in. Nick looked over the frames on the wall. There were class portraits from St. Albans and Georgetown, and shots of Widener with the past 2 U.S. presidents, with prime ministers, with senators. These were real photos of friends, of intimates, not staged handshakes at fundraisers. Nick had spent a decade in the Secret Service. He had once protected men like this, which had taught him how to get to them. He crossed the room and tucked into a dark nook where a copier and office supplies were stacked. Through a window, Nick had a view of the driveway and the staff cars parked beside the garage. The wife was in New York. He could see everyone coming and going, would know when he was alone with Widener, when no one would be around to hear him call for help. Widener entered, now without his jacket and tie, and switched on a lamp. He poured himself a small glass of scotch and added a few drops of water, as he did every night. A man of routine. It would be easy enough to do it now. Killing wasn't the difficult thing, though it was harder, louder, and shabbier than most suspected. Killing and getting away was the true test. Widener sat at his desk, his back to Nick. He flipped on the TV, turned to Ahoya's basketball game, then pulled his laptop toward him and set to work. Nick stepped out of the shadows. One turn, one careful look, and Widener would see him. But people so rarely stop to examine the familiar world around them. We walk blindly through this life. This was the most difficult part. To hold, silent and still, in the same room as the mark, even as the adrenaline raced through his body like flame up a fuse. Time was his weapon, isolating them. Nick watched through the window as the housekeeper pulled out in her Honda. Malcolm Widener would have a place in the history books, but at the end of the day, he was just a man, sitting alone and vulnerable. Following someone this closely inevitably created sympathy. Nick used it as a tool to put himself inside a target's head. Now he tuned it out. This was a job, and he was a professional. The gate opened and closed. One guard remained on the property, finishing his patrol before he went to check the security feeds from a post inside the pool house. There were no cameras here. Nick was inside the sanctum. It was time. He closed on Widener with silent steps, stood behind him, and touched his fingers to the sheath.